Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning into the NetSuite podcast. I'm Megan O'Brien, NetSuite's resident business and finance editor. In this episode, my co-host Ian McCue, who is a senior content marketing manager at NetSuite, and I both sit down with Nick Mooney. Nick is the director of product management at NetSuite and works with NetSuite Cloud Operations. We give you the lowdown on everything about Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or OCI. In the span of one episode, we'll cover what cloud infrastructure is, the benefits of Oracle's cloud infrastructure specifically, and why NetSuite is moving its applications over to OCI. If you ever had questions about NetSuite's move to OCI, or even more general curiosity about things like the difference between software as a service and infrastructure as a service, this is the episode for you. Stay tuned.
You're listening to the NetSuite podcast, where we discuss what's happening within NetSuite, why we're doing it, and where we're heading in the future. We'll dive into the details about the software and the people at NetSuite who are behind all the moving parts. We'll also feature customer growth stories, discussing the ups and downs of running a company and how one integrated system can help your business continue to scale.
Hey, Nick. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Hey, Ian. Hey, Megan. Happy to be here.
How are you doing today?
Doing pretty well. Yeah, it's a gorgeous 70-degree day in Colorado, so can't complain. How are you guys?
Doing well. And, I think we all have that in common. We're all here in Colorado. Megan is maybe the luckiest among us up in the mountains in Breckenridge. I'm in the Denver
great.
suburbs. And Nick, where are you?
Boulder County. So I've got a nice view of the foothills, but not in the mountains, but like down right in the valley. Yeah, it's nice.
If only we could all be so lucky.
Yeah.
You guys can come visit next time we record a podcast.
It's a good excuse.
Mm-hmm. Can we do the next one like on a snowy powder day? Like season? It'd be great.
Yeah, we'll plan that. We'll plan that perfectly.
Okay.
All right, Nick. Well, to start us off, could you just tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and kind of your role here at NetSuite?
Yeah, so I run the product management team for NetSuite's Cloud Operations department, which are some buzzy words, but it basically means sort of all things infrastructure, all things service delivery. So when we talk about NetSuite being a cloud service, what that actually means is that we run the NetSuite application for our users on a bunch of infrastructure on our data centers deployed all over the world. And that lets our customers log in from any device that they want to, and the service is sort of available. And so my role is to think about some of the customer impacting challenges that come with that. How do we make sure that our service is up and running all the time? How do we make sure that it's running fast and the sort of raw throughput of the NetSuite application is really great? How do we make sure that our data centers are close to where our customers are and adhere to the security requirements or the sort of data residency requirements that are becoming more popular in countries all around the world? So I think about a lot of those fun challenges and how we can make the NetSuite service delivery and infrastructure a whole lot better.
For those of us who might be a little less tech savvy, can you explain what cloud infrastructure is?
Yeah. Again, when we think about a cloud service, it's not really this sort of ephemeral thing floating around in the web, the air, the cloud, like a lot of people might dream of. It's really just a bunch of computers that are stacked together and accessible from the internet. And so we are responsible for buying and configuring and installing and running all of these computers together in a data center so that everything that you use in the NetSuite application functions the way that you want to. And so that our customers don't have to do that themselves. 10, 20 years ago, if you wanted to run a website, you had to buy a stack of servers and stick them in a closet, on the floor in your office building somewhere. And so cloud infrastructure starts to do that as a service for our customers instead. The sort of popular acronym out there these days is SaaS, software as a service. But there are a few other acronyms that follow along with this too: platform as a service and infrastructure as a service. So one of the really big exciting things that we're working on right now is taking advantage of OCI's infrastructure as a service.
I hear all those acronyms all the time. You've got PaaS, SaaS, infrastructure as a service, which I kind of called IaaS in my head. Can you, in the theme of dumbing it down and giving a SparkNotes version, can you kind of explain what the difference is between those?
Yeah. So software as a service is an application that's running in the cloud that you may log into and use, like Spotify or even Facebook can be thought of as software as a service. For a business perspective, NetSuite is a software as a service. It's a bunch of functionality that's accessible to you over the internet. You can think about it that way. You pay a monthly service subscription fee to access that software. Platform as a service has been an emerging set of capabilities where you want to do a bunch of sort of more complicated computing stuff, but you don't want to have all of the hardware in your own closet, and you don't want to develop the tools to go take advantage of that. So think big data kind of stuff. And more recently emerging is this notion of infrastructure as a service. And this is something that NetSuite is starting to take advantage of. We're really excited about. Which is not having to worry about any of the hardware at all, not having to purchase or rent any of the hardware, configure any of that, have the sort of physical space to put computers together. Instead, you get to rent that computing power from somebody who's really good at that kind of stuff. And NetSuite's been around for 25 years, and because we were, the first cloud service, we had to get really good at building data centers. We had to get really good at buying computers and putting them together in a data center and making them accessible to our customers so that we could run a NetSuite service on top of that infrastructure. But we don't want to be really good at building data centers. We want to be really good at building NetSuite. We want to be really good at building the software that our customers know and love. We want to help our customers run their businesses better. And so infrastructure as a service is this idea of other companies becoming experts and specializing in building and running data centers so that NetSuite doesn't have to. The good news is that Oracle has started to compete in this space. Some of the other big players that have been existing out there, Amazon is AWS, Microsoft's Azure, Google's GCP. Oracle is a little bit late to the game, but I think that's going to serve to our benefit. With their now offering called Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, OCI. And I say that serves to our benefit a little bit, actually, because when Amazon launched AWS, they're one of the sort of first infrastructure as a service providers, these sort of cloud providers. They didn't really know what they were doing. They had to build this for themselves. They decided to try and sell it to some other people. It sort of started off as like really small website hosting kind of stuff. It wasn't designed or built for enterprise grade applications, enterprise grade SaaS sort of stuff. That was tacked on later. And so 10 years later, there's 10 years worth of technical debt. There's 10 years worth of sort of tacking stuff on in this monstrosity that has become AWS. And so when Oracle launched OCI, they call it sort of next-gen cloud service that's designed specifically for enterprise. We get to avoid a lot of the mistakes that AWS made by sort of starting with this enterprise-first approach. Which is really exciting. And so NetSuite, of course, being owned by Oracle, we use OCI, but we're actually really excited about it when we were looking at cloud providers. OCI is the best fit for NetSuite anyway, because it's designed specifically for enterprise. So that was sort of a long-winded answer to your question, which is, what is the difference between infrastructure service, platform as a service, software as a service? Infrastructure as a service is this idea of us being able to rent computers from somebody who is an expert at building data centers and sort of offloads that requirement from us. We don't have to be good at building data centers anymore. We get to focus our energies on being really good at providing NetSuite.
Yeah, Nick, I think that all makes a lot of sense. Thanks for kind of breaking that down. And it also leads nicely into my next question for you. As you mentioned, OCI, right, is this infrastructure as a service that exists, and NetSuite is moving its applications onto OCI. Can you just explain a little bit more about kind of what's behind that project, what's behind the move, and this transition to OCI from our own data centers?
Yeah, so we made the decision a couple of years ago that we were going to stop building our own data centers, and we were going to start building NetSuite data centers on top of Oracle's infrastructure as a service platform, OCI. We are something like 4 or 5 years into that project, and now 3 years into running production data centers on OCI. So it's strange to talk about this as a new thing because we've been working on it for so long, and it's really not that new to even our customers. We've had a live data center for over 3 years. Right now, we have over 2/3 of our customers are running in the OCI-based data centers, and only 1/3 are sort of remaining still in our legacy data centers. by the end of the year, we plan to move all of our customers out of those legacy data centers and into OCI. The reason we did this was manifold. Some of the stuff I mentioned before, we don't want to be experts in building data centers. We want to be experts in service delivery. We want to be experts in developing features for NetSuite. And OCI has this goal to compete with a bunch of these existing players, AWS and Azure and GCP, and to be world-class enterprise-grade cloud service provider. And so we get to leverage Oracle's investments here, which are much more than NetSuite would have made ourselves. There are some other benefits to OCI that NetSuite just wouldn't have been able to do ourselves, though. Global reach is one of the most exciting. OCI has regions and facilities all over the world existing. We can go build in places that we never would have been able to really if we were building these facilities ourselves. Places like Tokyo and Osaka in Japan, or places like Sydney and Melbourne in Australia. We now have data centers in these places, and we never did before. In fact, we didn't have any data centers in APAC prior to our OCI capabilities. So global availability is really exciting. The flexibility of OCI, because we're provisioning these computers using software, means that we can react a whole lot faster, and we get to do infrastructure stuff in a much more flexible and dynamic way than we did before. For example, rather than buying a computer and sort of running it for 5 or 6 years until it depreciates and we're sort of end of lifing, or we're getting close to where it is no longer supported and we want to move on to newer hardware. Now we can adopt the latest and greatest generations of hardware as soon as they come out. We don't buy and own these things anymore. We're paying a service fee to rent and provision these computers. And so we are constantly upgrading to the latest generation, the fastest servers that are available to us. Another benefit of OCI is sort of their investments in resiliency and disaster recovery, a lot of capabilities that we get to leverage that are just much more robust than NetSuite was. We're pretty proud of the data centers that we built over the last 25 years, but OCI takes it to this like almost paranoid level. It's great. They have this notion of multiple fault domains, which are different rooms within the same building that are all on their own network. They're all on their own power supply. They have 6-inch concrete walls that separate them with rebar, so that if a car accidentally crashes into them, right, the data center is not going to be impacted at all. So all these sort of really cool features of world-class data center physical infrastructure that NetSuite just wouldn't have been able to do on our own. And so we get to leverage all of those really cool capabilities.
Yeah, that's awesome, and a lot of really impressive benefits there. So a lot of our listeners are probably NetSuite customers. What does this kind of transition mean for NetSuite customers? Does it impact them in any way?
In terms of functionality, no. There's a very brief, less than 1 hour downtime maintenance that we're going to schedule far in advance. And customers actually have the ability to reschedule that through the customer schedule maintenance tool. It's a nice little web page you can go and pick from a date picker, a date and time that works best for you. So a little bit of downtime maintenance that's easily scheduled and rescheduled. But other than that, there's going to be no sort of functional difference that customers will notice. It's the same great NetSuite that you know and love today. It's just running in a different data center and on slightly different hardware. Some of the more intangible benefits, though, are going to start to emerge over time. Some of the benefits that I had mentioned before, things like the fact that we're always running on the latest and greatest hardware. We're going to see some performance benefits from that. Oracle's investments in resiliency at every layer, right? Clustered servers, redundant power supplies, redundant networks, some of the other sort of physical infrastructure prevention things that we see are going to show up in the customer experience as well. Like NetSuite is going to be a more resilient and more stable product as a part of it. Same thing with availability. Like customers who are in Japan who used to be sending their network calls over the internet to Seattle, now have much lower latency because they're making calls to a local data center somewhere in Japan. So some of those positive benefits are going to show up. over time, you're going to see more and more of those sort of intangible benefits show up. But as far as NetSuite functionality, absolutely no difference. It's the same application before and after. You're really not going to notice a whole lot as we swap this under the hood engine, this data center beneath the NetSuite application.
How did 6 out of the top 7 best performing tech stocks gain visibility and control over financials, inventory, planning, and budgeting with NetSuite by Oracle? Answers at netsuite.com/code. netsuite.com/code.
Now, when do you expect all NetSuite customers to be officially running on OCI?
Well, every new customer that signs with NetSuite starts in OCI by default. So we made that change almost 2 years ago. Again, we've been running in these data centers for over 3 years now. So lots and lots of our customers there. Over 2/3 of our customers are running in OCI. The last third of our customers who are still on some of those legacy data centers, we are moving at rapid pace over the next year. So my best guess right now is by the end of this calendar year, we'll have everybody running and we'll be 100% completely on OCI.
Yeah, Nick, you have run through, quite a few of the benefits that kind of come with OCI. Anything that's maybe not so obvious that might help our customers when it comes to being hosted on OCI, or anything that's, notably different in terms of how NetSuite is doing this now versus how it was doing it in the past when it comes to hosting and infrastructure?
Well, yeah, one of the most exciting things to me is Oracle is a much larger company than NetSuite, and again, is trying to compete with an existing market with some really well-known brands, right? AWS and GCP and Azure are big cloud providers that are out there. And so Oracle is prioritizing investing in making this competitive and making this best for enterprise. And so we're going to start to see those investments become available in the form of features for NetSuite. And I'm really excited to be able to take advantage of those kinds of features in the future. So not a whole lot to talk about today that we're not already using, but things like artificial intelligence services are going to be showing up in NetSuite real soon.
And how do you think the transition to OCI kind of helps differentiate NetSuite from some of its competitors and some of the other SaaS applications that we see when it comes to ERP or even just financials and accounting software for your mid-sized growing businesses?
I think the flexibility, again, NetSuite is designed to suit many different types of businesses and needs, from really small businesses to really large businesses. And so the flexibility of OCI allows us to design the right hardware configuration for customers at all different kinds of sizes. And I don't know that our competitors are really able to do that very well. So OCI is going to give us that kind of flexibility to do exactly what's right for our customers. And that's going to be a huge benefit, especially when compared to competitors.
Now, I can't help but bring up the fact that artificial intelligence and machine learning technologies like ChatGPT, it's all anyone can talk about recently. Does OCI provide any of these capabilities around AI and machine learning?
Yeah, of course, it's in the headlines basically every day these days. ChatGPT is really cool because it sort of gave the general public a really good understanding of what artificial intelligence can do. But it's not new. Like, these ideas and these technologies have been in the works for years, and NetSuite has been working on things like this for years. We're not ready to release a ChatGPT, equivalent on NetSuite. But this idea, the sort of core components that make up ChatGPT or artificial intelligence these days are, data sets. NetSuite has a lot of good data, some algorithms that train on that data, and develop some models, look for patterns in that data, and develop some models that can sort of repeat that pattern or generate some new content based off of inputs using that model. And we can use that intelligence in all different kinds of specific applications. And so NetSuite itself has been developing some of these machine learning and AI services for quite a while. OCI has the added benefit of providing some AI capabilities themselves. You bring the data and they sort of have the model and the other tools that you can use for AI. So one of the more exciting ones that we've been working on lately is all about document vision. This, you can take a picture of a document, a contract or a receipt or a menu or whatever, and you can use this in lots of places as an image. But until recently, it's been really difficult for computers to understand what that picture is about or what to do with that image, right? And so one of OCI's AI services is all about document vision. It's about taking that image and trying to understand, oh, this is an invoice for a bill. And one step further, I understand that this is a bill and it's addressed to this person, and it's this value amount in this currency, and it's as of this date, and even here are some of the inventory items that are included in that invoice. And we can use all of that intelligence mapped with some other custom logic to say, oh, this invoice needs to go be filed away in this place, or needs to generate a shipping label and go to our warehouse team, and a whole bunch of other sort of direction stuff. And so AP automation showed up at SuiteWorld last year. We had a big announcement. It's one of the first places that we're using this inside of NetSuite. So really exciting that we sort of get to use some of NetSuite's foundational stuff that we built around machine learning, coupled with some of OCI's technologies, their AI services. And we get to produce really meaningful features for our customers. This is just one example, but we're going to be able to incorporate tons of these things in the years to come. Really, really exciting on the machine learning and AI frontier for us. And again, only really possible because we have OCI. We have places where we can spin up temporary infrastructure, train these models. We have the ability to provision these AI services and leverage all of the investments that OCI is making. And it's just accelerating our time to market with some of these new features.
One concern that I think comes up with the cloud a lot, or at least historically has come up when we think about the cloud, and especially putting sensitive data in the cloud, is security. How does OCI kind of mitigate some of that security? You talked about the disaster recovery and some of the extensive efforts that kind of go to there, but how does it really ensure that it's protecting the data that it does have from customers all over the world?
Yeah, so this is where infrastructure as a service becomes important to understand. NetSuite is deploying our data centers, our architecture. So we have clustered web servers, we have clustered app servers, we have clustered database technology, and we define our network and how these computers talk to each other. And we hold the keys to the encrypted database. And so NetSuite has always had an extremely high bar for ourselves in terms of security. We would not be moving to OCI if we thought, at all that OCI was reducing our security posture. And so many of the things that we care about from a security perspective, we're able to still do and hold those lines. We hold the keys to the things that we really care about in terms of NetSuite security. On top of OCI's infrastructure as a service platform is where we're building. And so we do care about sort of the physical underlying security as well. The good news is that OCI's security posture there is even better than what NetSuite has done in our legacy data center. I mentioned some of the almost paranoia-like things that they do in their physical facilities. Not only do they have biometric login and 24/7 surveillance, which is sort of normal in most data centers, but they have 6-inch thick concrete with rebar to make sure nobody can drive a car into the side. They have armed security guards who patrol the data centers at all times. Like there's quite a bit of physical security here as well. And so we get to maintain control over the virtual machines and the software that we're configuring to build our own data centers. And then OCI takes the physical security of their data centers to a whole new level.
So Nick, based on everything you kind of covered there, it sounds like the level of security that OCI is providing is kind of superior to what the vast majority of businesses could provide on their own.
By far. Again, they take it to a level that even NetSuite was well. Again, we're very proud of the data centers that we build, and we set a high bar for ourselves in terms of security. OCI takes it to a whole different level, and both of these levels, the NetSuite legacy data centers and what OCI does, is far above what most customers, small and medium-sized businesses, are ever going to be able to do for themselves. Nobody is stacking servers in the closet in their office space and hiring security guards 24/7 to patrol and make sure nobody gets in there. So one of the huge benefits of these world-class sort of enterprise target cloud providers like OCI.
How does OCI enhance the scalability of NetSuite? Can it better support our largest customers?
Absolutely. OCI, again, is designed for enterprise-grade applications. You see some of the really big names that are on OCI today. NetSuite is not OCI's largest customer by far. And so we get to sort of walk the same path as some of these other really large customers as OCI designs for scalability. Specific to NetSuite, the things that we get to take advantage of is that flexibility again. We get to provision the latest and greatest generations of hardware as soon as they become available, which means faster computers, bigger computers in more places around the world. And so this is going to let us scale our infrastructure just from a raw throughput perspective as we go. It's also much faster to enter new markets. We don't have to go scope out and buy a physical building and then buy thousands of computers and have humans connect them all together and configure them the right way before we bring up a data center. It used to take us 6 to 12 months to open a new data center somewhere. Now, because we're doing all of this using software, one of the benefits of infrastructure as a service is that we can provision computers over an API, and we can write software to go build a data center that looks exactly like a blueprint that we have written. And we get to repeat that blueprint from data center to data center to data center because they all look the same. So anywhere that OCI has facilities in place, has infrastructure in place, NetSuite can go build a data center there that looks exactly like the data center that we just built yesterday. And that means we get to move a whole lot faster. We get to scale faster. It also improves reliability because we've got a lot greater consistency between those data centers all around the world. So from a scalability perspective, OCI accelerates us, not just enables us.
Nick, anything else that you think customers or just people in general that would be kind of good for them to know about OCI that you haven't already covered today?
There's a couple of materials out there. This podcast is a great summary, but go look through Suite Answers. We've written a bunch of questions targeted towards customers, the most frequently asked questions that we get about OCI. Talk to your account managers. They have some materials as well if you've got more specific questions about your implementation. OCI is much bigger than NetSuite. So there's lots of OCI documentation. If you're looking for other cloud services, infrastructure as a service sort of capabilities outside of your NetSuite implementation, go check out OCI. They've got a free tier for some of those really lightweight applications. They do basically everything that you want out of a cloud service provider. They do far more than NetSuite's needs, and NetSuite's got some pretty sophisticated enterprise needs out of a cloud provider. So, a quick Google and you'll find Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, all kinds of documentation and capabilities there. On the NetSuite site, we've covered this pretty well under the infrastructure section. We've got a couple of blog posts out there as well. And my name's out there with this podcast too. So feel free to contact me if you have more questions about OCI or what NetSuite's doing.
And we'll be sure to link to those resources in the show notes. But that's all the questions we had for you, Nick. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I love talking about this, so it's fun to geek out with you.
Well, I don't know about you, but in just a half hour with Nick, I feel much more knowledgeable about everything cloud. Hearing about all the benefits OCI will bring to NetSuite and its customers has me personally excited for the move. I think there's so much room to grow even further on OCI and create these bigger and better capabilities. So big thanks to our guest, Nick Mooney, for joining us. Remember, if you have any questions, be sure to check out the resources in our show notes or reach out to Nick or your account managers. As always, a big thanks to our editing team over at Lampstand and to all of you for tuning in. If you want more episodes just like this one, make sure you subscribe to our channel and give us a rating and review. Until next time.
You just listened to the NetSuite podcast. Be sure to tune in every week with more NetSuite developments, stories, and insights into the benefits of one integrated system to help you run your business.